A new box finally arrived. This is the xTool F1. It supports a 10-watt diode laser and a 2-watt IR laser. And in this video, we're going to look at it, so let's get it unzipped. Hey, how's it going everyone? Steve here, welcome back. Now, xTool was finally good enough to find me an xTool F1. I was really anxious to look at this, and they'd promised it to me many months ago, but when the time came, they couldn't find me one, and I think they were having some manufacturing issues, and then just volume, I guess they couldn't make them fast enough. So they finally did send me one, and I want to thank them for that, because this laser is actually really cool. So in addition to all of the things you're used to doing with a 10-watt blue diode laser, this laser also has a 2-watt IR laser. So now you're starting to get the capabilities that fiber lasers have. And you can do it all in this one little box. And that makes this a really interesting thing to look at. So in this video, we're going to take a look. We're going to look at all of the features of it. I'll show you a lot of samples. I had quite a bit of time to play with this one, which was actually a lot of fun. And I'll come up with some summary at the end, and you can decide whether this is something you may want in your shop, or more likely, if you're in a jewelry business or something, maybe this is the kind of tool you'll want. So with that, let's get started here. Now, to get this laser set up, unlike most diode lasers, all you really have to do here is pull this out of the box using that convenient handle up on top, drop it onto your workbench and plug it in, plug in the power as well as a USB cable, and really that's all you need to do. Now, if you want to run the air filter, you'll also want to connect the hose between the laser and the filter, as well as a USB cable. That USB cable allows you to turn the filter on and off automatically when the laser's running, and that's all you have to do. Now, a quick flyover here, you can see that knob up on top. That controls pretty much everything on this laser. If you slide open the shield, you can see the workspace. It's 114 by 114 millimeters, a decent size, a little small maybe for some people. You can see the laser pointer there. Over on the left-hand side, we have an emergency stop, which you may need. And along with this laser came a guide that you can screw into the workspace if you need alignment of something consistent. And this one also came with this cutting plate if you're cutting material. And finally, I have on this one, they sent me the air filter. It's all automatic. You don't really have to do anything. It turns on and off when it needs to, and it works really well. And we'll talk a bit about that as well. Now, since I have the laser open here, I'll show you focus, which is the only other thing you need to know. I'll drop a piece of material down, and then just turning this knob up on the top on the right-hand side, you can move the two dots closer together, and when they overlap, you have perfect focus. And that's all there is to it. Other than that, everything else is in software, and we'll talk about that next. So as far as software goes, we'll start with Lightburn. Yes, Lightburn is supported, although I would put support in quotes. You can control the laser from Lightburn, but you lose a lot of capabilities that you just get for free with XCS, and we'll talk a bit more about that. So for example, framing in Lightburn, you frame once, and then if you want to frame again, you have to hit the frame button a second time. So you don't get that continuous framing like you do in XCS. Now there might be a setting in Lightburn that makes this happen, I don't know, but it's just a bit of a pain. The other thing that you'll notice is if you go to the console tab in Lightburn, they've added a bunch of macros here. One is to select IR laser, and one is to select blue laser. Now the challenge here is it always defaults to the blue laser. So if I were to take this job that I have on the screen here and engrave it with the IR laser, and I wanted to do it again, like a second pass, for example, it would just automatically default to the blue laser, and that will drive you crazy. So, that's all I'll say about Lightburn. It works. I've used it. It does, pretty much everything you'd expect it to do, but it isn't ideal. So the real solution is to use XCS, and we'll cover that now. So arguably the right way to use the xTool F1 is with the xTool Creative Space software, and that's what I'm going to use pretty much for the rest of this video, and just show you some of the things that it can do and why you'd want to use it over, say, Lightburn. And I mentioned some of the challenges with Lightburn. So what I did here was I set up an image just a happy face with an outer circle and a small hole. So what I'll do is I'll just make this like a keychain, and we'll have the happy face engraved on the surface. I'll use black acrylic just to show you what we can do. Now, the way this is going to work is I'm going to do the happy face using the IR laser, and you can see the settings here. You can pick your own if you so choose. Remember to invert the image, because otherwise it'll look like that, and it will look strange when you engrave it on black acrylic. And then for the second layer, which is the cut layer, I'm going to use the blue laser, and we'll have, well, 100% power, and we'll probably go pretty slow here, and we'll do a couple of passes just to make sure we get through it. And what this allows you to do is within a single project, without really thinking about it that much, you can change which kind of laser is being used for which layer. And that's actually pretty cool. And that's something you can't do with Lightburn, at least not automatically. So let me cut this out. And again, I'm going to use some of the black acrylic that xTool provided, and I'll show you what it looks like. So as the engraving job starts here, you can see that the happy face as it comes out is really, really crisp. Probably better than any engraving you've ever seen if you've only seen diode lasers. And it's just amazing, actually. And I could have probably gone faster on the engraving, but this job took about 3 minutes, maybe a little less. And about half of that, honestly, was cutting the outline. And I did 2 passes there, which I probably didn't need to do. I also probably could have gone faster on the engraving. It ended up very dark. So, you know, all in all, a fantastic output here. So there's a couple of other cool things that XCS does for you that you wouldn't get in something like Lightburn. And that is automatic selection of settings to some degree. So if I have my logo, my company logo loaded in here, and I'll show you why. And what I'm going to do is engrave this on a brass coin blank. So I'll pick that, and I happen to know that the thickness is about 1 millimeter, and you can hear the laser move there. Now if I select this thing, because I picked brass, it automatically selected IR, and it set the laser the way it thought the laser should be set. And that's all we have to do. So it was actually pretty cool. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I've set the framing to outline rather than rectangle, and the reason I picked this logo is because it's a really weird shape. It's got all these little squiggles on the bottom, and if I hit framing now, you can see when it frames it draws the exact outline, and then I can nudge it around a bit if I need to fix the alignment. So a couple of really nice things, and it's one of the reasons you may want to use XCS. So I'll let the engraving go here, and it's sped up a couple of times just to make it tolerable, but keep in mind this is on brass, and if you've only got a diode laser, you probably haven't seen this before, but the final result here looks amazing. And you know, this is kudos to the xTool F1 team for making this happen. So I did some more results here. Tried the diode laser using my gradient test, and I varied the speed up the side here. I did it several times, and you can see it does a great job actually on grayscale. The optimal engraving here for 0 to 100% is probably around 8,000 millimeters a minute, which is really fast. So you shouldn't be too disappointed. On the IR side, I did a photo of my dog, and this is a photograph. There's no two ways about it. You've never seen anything like this come off a diode laser. Just so much nicer. Slate coaster on the IR side again, very, very crisp. And if you zoom in a bit here, you can see it's just amazing. Again, on the IR side, some stainless steel. Just did something quick here, so nothing too fancy. Lamecoid material. I love this material for making signs, and it works really well with diode lasers as long as you can find someone to cut it for you. And again, very crisp, and it did this in no time at all. And they provided this really neat wood slice, And I did a grayscale of a flower on it here just to see how the grayscale turned out. And again, it was fantastic too. So there you go. So you saw the results and they look fantastic, and kudos to xTool for putting this package together and putting those two lasers into a single module. Now there were a couple of things I want to look at here on the pros and cons side. On the pro side, this is a very, very portable laser. It weighs about 10 pounds and it's got a really nice metal handle up on top, so you can just pick it up and go, grab your laptop, and you can go and engrave anywhere. Next on the list, the smoke purifier, which is that white box behind me there. It's absolutely amazing. Even if you're not using it for the F1, just if you need a smoke purifier, buy that one. It just works amazingly. Even when I was shooting video here, I had the front of the F1 laser open, and it was still sucking the fumes back into the purifier. So even when I was cutting that acrylic, which tends to be very smelly, absolutely no odor in my workshop. So again, go buy one of those if you need a fume extractor. And finally, on the pro side here, it does offer a much broader set of materials that you can engrave with over a standard diode laser. Now you do pay a premium here to some degree because it is a little more expensive. But if you need to do brass and paper, or brass and wood, or stainless steel and whatever, you can do it with this laser. There's almost no material you won't be able to engrave going forward if you have an F1. Now on the con side, there were some things I didn't like so much. Lightburn support was a bit shaky. Having to remember to go to the console window to click that red laser button to do an IR engrave, that's really just a non-starter, because even while I was shooting video for this, I messed up material at least half a dozen times because I forgot to go in there and click the IR button. The only thing xTool can do here, honestly, is they could have the laser remember its last state. I'm sure they automatically revert to the blue for safety reasons. IR lasers tend to be much more hazardous than blue lasers, so that's probably why they do it. Now, in fairness, most of the challenge here is in Lightburn. Lightburn will let you use a different laser for two different layers. XCS does, and that's why you might want to choose XCS if you're doing, say, an engrave and a cut. You'll probably want to use XCS. Next on the list here on the con side, the workspace is a bit small at 115 by 115 millimeters. That's a function of using the galvos rather than moving a big heavy laser module around like they do with a standard diode laser. You trade some of the workspace convenience for speed. This laser will go 4,000 millimeters a second. Like, it's just amazingly fast, and the beam size is fractions of a millimeter, very, very small. So you do make some trade-offs for that convenience and that speed, but the workspace, there's not much they can do, but it is a bit small, so keep that in mind. And last on the list here, you need to understand, this really isn't necessarily a con, but you need to understand that this laser really isn't a heavy-duty cutting laser. Yes, if you're, maybe making keychains and you want to do an engrave and then a cut, it's okay for that sort of thing. But, if you want to cut through a 2x4, this is not the laser for that, and it's not really intended for that. This is really more for engraving, and we'll talk a bit in a minute here about who this laser is really for. Okay, so I love the xTool F1. I think it's a great product for its intended purpose. I did find its most valuable purpose for me was to make those metal business cards, because it can create those things in a fraction of the time it takes my CO2 laser to do it. So you may actually see it around my shop here in the background of videos, who knows. But the people who are going to love this, the people who this laser is intended for, are people who need portability, people who maybe do craft fairs where they just want to plunk this setup exactly the way it is behind me on a table at a craft fair, and then they can engrave people's names or anything custom on the fly without customers having to wait for 10 minutes and no smoke because you've got that great air purifier. So those people are gonna love it, and there are a lot of those people. So I'm not worried that this laser is not going to be successful. I'll put an affiliate link down below if you do want to buy one. Now, I will say you may have noticed that I was doing a lot of capturing B-roll here of the laser running with the cover open. And I was, of course, using my safety goggles that are both blue laser and IR laser compliant at OD6. So, you know, I was safe, but you might want to go watch the video I did on laser safety goggles just recently, and I'll put a link up above here, and you know, go watch that, and I'll see you over there, and get out there, make your world, and I'll see you next time.